To some, they're the ultimate symbol of safety. For others, guns are seen as the source of problems. Gun rights are a polarizing issue at a time when our nation and voters can feel divided. This week, we're exploring what communities are doing to stop gun violence.
The reality is that 20 years from now, the homicide rate will be a function partly of what we do right now.
What role lawmakers should play, and what we learned researchers say is standing in their way of gathering more accurate information about the causes of gun violence in America. This is The Race. This week we're in Indianapolis. You don't have to live here or even have visited to understand one problem this city faces, and that's gun violence. It's an issue in so many communities across the country, but this city says that it's taking a unique approach when it comes to taking on this issue, and we've come to get a firsthand look. And you're from the east side?
I am from the east side, yep.
As Sharday Hoskins drove me through the east side of Indianapolis, she told me about what some people think of where she grew up.
If you ask anybody from here, they typically avoid the area. It's kind of known for being a high violent area.
She says she started losing classmates to gun violence when she was in high school.
When you're not from where these individuals are from, like the Far East Side, it seems like just stop shooting people. It seems that easy, but it's really not that easy because that's how these individuals are taking care of their family. It's how they feed their kids.
Like many cities, Indianapolis saw a jump in violent crime during the pandemic. In 2020, the murder rate was 3 times the national average. It's why the city's spending a large portion of the $237 million it received from the federal stimulus package on reducing gun violence.
Our goal is non-policing. It's more so getting at the root causes.
I met with Lauren Rodriguez. She's the head of one of the city departments in charge of the violence reduction plan. Much of it focuses on what can lead to a shooting, long before a trigger is pulled.
You're going to continue this pattern, which can lead to violent crime, right? You're going to steal for food. You're going to steal for diapers. I've seen it. I used to be a public defender. And then because you have those things on your record, then it's harder for you to get jobs. So then you need more money. So what do? And that's just one example.
Money is going to grassroots organizations that help with issues like food insecurity and job training.
What the strategy tells us is there's a very small number of people in any area driving violence. What it helps us do is focus specifically on those individuals that are driving the violence.
Sharday helps lead a team of violence interrupters. It's a strategy several cities are using, hiring people from neighborhoods hit hard by gun violence to calm tensions between rival groups and on crime scenes.
On scenes, that's where I found is most helpful, is to kind of be a liaison between the family and the police, because the community has their own perception of the police.
I think nationally, we need to do a far better job of working on what I would call primary prevention. The kinds of things that don't seem like gun violence prevention techniques or strategies, but in fact would in the long run reduce gun violence.
Tom Stuckey is a former member of law enforcement who now studies what's being done to stop gun violence.
Because we have more individuals that are willing to use violence to resolve disputes. So we need to be thinking as a society about how do we create more effective conflict resolution mechanisms.
He also says for this problem, there is no quick fix.
The reality is that 20 years from now, the homicide rate will be a function partly of what we do right now.
Violent crime is down in Indianapolis so far this year, a step in the right direction. But to Sharday, the work is far from over.
It took me 2 years to come back to this exact spot.
This intersection near Norfolk State and Virginia may not mean much to you.
The police never caught the person who shot us.
But for Cameron Bertrand and Dorian Jackson, it's a place that changed their lives.
We hear that gun cop.
It's where they were shot by a thief back in 2015.
He had the gun pointed at us and he was like, you know what time it is, run it. For those who don't know what that means empty your pockets.
We're having a conversation.
We're both shot here.
Shot right here.
Not to redocument their injuries.
If I had went 1 millimeter to the left, you and I would have never met, Joe.
But to learn their perspective about violent crime today.
Has gun violence gotten worse?
Yeah.
It has. They call this Shark City. because the mindset for most people is eat or be eaten.
Both men have worked to move past their injuries by creating nonprofits and a survivor network. But they haven't forgotten.
When I seen his eyes, I knew that wasn't something he wanted to do, you know, because he was trembling.
And they aren't alone. Cities like Denver, Milwaukee, and Baltimore could all shatter their homicide records in 2022. And while not every city is seeing a spike in crime with the midterm election on the horizon, polls indicate violence is a top issue on voters' minds. Leaders in both parties scrambling to get it under control.
Fund the police.
President Joe Biden delivered a speech on Tuesday calling for more police funding. Last month,
I have to do this.
Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida suspended a prosecutor in the Tampa area over concerns he was being too soft on criminals. So how do Republicans and Democrats differ when it comes to crime response? Leaders in both parties appear supportive of increases in funding to hire police. President Biden wants 100,000 new officers, for instance, and both parties are interested in violence prevention programs. But that's where the similarities end. Republicans, if they take back control of Congress, want to focus on stricter penalties for breaking the law. Democrats, meanwhile, want to focus on gun control to limit the guns on America's streets.
They're unfamiliar. They have no rapport.
As for Cameron and Dorian, they say hiring more cops may sound great on paper, but unless the new recruits actually know and care about the communities they serve, their view is little will change. Trust and hope remain a big issue in some of our country's most violent areas.
But there has to be a rapport before you can actually come in and serve. We have young, good people who don't want to carry guns, that feel like they have to.
In Norfolk, Virginia, I'm Joe St. George.
A longtime teacher shot in a school shooting just months ago is opening up about her recovery.
I was there to protect them, but they ended up having to help themselves or trying to help me.
The powerful message she has for her students now that they're back in school. You're watching The Race.